Hello, everybody. This is Katie here.
And Candace, and welcome to Dead in the Heart of Texas, a Texas true crime and paranormal podcast where we tell you some scary and true stories from the state of Texas. But this episode's actually going to be a bit different in that it is our anniversary episode.
Woohoo.
Our 1 year anniversary episode, even though technically we took a very long hiatus. We're still gonna celebrate it.
We're still 1 year older.
Yes. It's also a bit belated. We celebrated our 1 year anniversary on May 3rd, so our podcast is a Taurus, in case you were wondering. But yeah, we decided to do something a little different this time around. Instead of telling stories from Texas, we're gonna just tell some stories from the United States. And we also picked each other's episodes. So yeah, we'll get to that here in a little bit, but first I have to say, I noticed your mug, Katie, and I know y'all can't see it, but it's so cute. It's like a little sloth mug that you got for your bridal shower, right?
My baby shower. Just kidding, guys.
Yes, as I called it, her baby shower. I'll never live that down.
Yeah, my husband and I have matching coffee mugs. Mine says Mrs. Slothy, and his says Mr. Slothy. But I'm not gonna lie, sometimes I use the Mr. Slothy one, because why not? And it's funny.
We don't have gender rules here.
Nope.
We do what we want.
Exactly. That's right, girls. You don't always have to, cook and clean. Remember that.
Heck yeah. Marriage is a two-way street, alright?
And sometimes you have a kick-ass best friend like Candace, who will beat the person up if they make them cry. I don't know. It's never happened, but she would if I asked. Right?
Yes. I'm always there for you, as the Friends theme song would suggest.
Yay.
So how's, you're back home? How's that going?
Yeah, so if you guys really want a spooky experience, just go to any big airport, and it's basically a ghost town.
Yeah, I can imagine. I just saw, a TikTok of a guy who was, the only one on a plane, so the entire TikTok was, him just switching seats.
Oh!
And Mamma Mia was playing in the background.
I'd be so freaked out if it was just me and the flight attendant, you know?
Yeah, that would be really weird.
Oof, that was not my case. The cases. The planes, both of them were probably, a quarter full.
Okay.
But, it was weird, because sometimes they would have, two strangers get seated together, and each time I'd be around, and then they'd be like, this isn't social distancing, can I move? And so one of them would move.
Well, at least they got the opportunity to move, I suppose.
Exactly. So, yeah, I flew home to you guys probably know my current undisclosed location, and then in 3 weeks, I get to move to a new undisclosed location.
Woo! Are you excited?
I am tired because I'm having bladder issues, guys. It's great.
No.
Canker sore. The canker sore is almost gone, though.
Oh,
but
that's
then
good.
my bladder issue is replacing it, so it's a spooky time.
So spooky. Have you started packing yet?
I wanted to rest today, but then we've kind of made a plan of how we're gonna sell everything and move. So now we just have to execute it and find an apartment. How are you?
I'm good. We were under tornado watch today until 5 p.m.
Oh no.
Yeah, I felt so bad because I had kind of a lazy start to the day, and so I didn't take Freya, my dog, for a walk until 1:30 or 2. And as soon as I took her out, we made it as far as the gazebo, and then she heard the thunder and was like, nope, I'm going back inside. So it's been a pretty rainy day here, but I love it. I also just got my book in, my Pride and Prejudice book. Katie and I are doing not a podcast. We are doing a podcast, but we're doing a book club, and we're rereading Pride and Prejudice. So I'm looking forward to. I haven't read that book since 7th grade, and I probably didn't get much out of it, if I'm being completely honest.
Yeah, I feel like when I read it as a kid, I just wanted to read it so I could say I could get through a Jane Austen book.
Yeah. I was just like, ooh, look at me. I'm so smart. I'm reading this really advanced book.
Well, that was what they made us do in, middle school. It was like, hey, read these books and you get points, and then you can brag and get presents. I don't know. Prizes. That's the word.
Yeah, I do recall that I made like a 70-something on that AR test, though, which was like the lowest I've ever made on an AR test.
Ugh. Ugh.
So anyways.
I'm ashamed of you for that, Candace. Just kidding.
I know, I'm ashamed of myself, but I mean, it was 7th grade, I had more issues going on, which we won't talk about.
Middle school. Yay!
Yeah, it was a blast. Loved it.
Oh, hey! Back on the book note, maybe one day we can have, like, a podcast spooky book of the month thing.
Ooh, like a Dead in the Heart of Texas book club? Almost.
We could write books. No.
Oh, we could write. I have a couple of plans. I have a couple of plans for some stories I want to write, but I haven't wrote any of them.
Okay, I'll leave that to you.
Okay. So yeah, do you want to go ahead and get started?
Yeah, sure. Do you want to introduce why you picked my story today?
Oh, yeah, for Katie's story, I wanted her to cover the Kent State Massacre, just because it was the 50th anniversary of the 50th year passing, whatever you want to call it, of the Kent State Massacre, which I don't want to say too much about it because I'm sure Katie did a lot of research. I know she was very interested in this topic, so I can't wait to hear what she has to say. So yeah, without further ado, take it away, Katie.
It's me. You guys are stuck with me now. Alright, let me try to read my tiny font on my phone. Okay. So, as Candace said, today I will be covering the Kent State Massacre, also known as the day the war came home. Now, that isn't joyful, guys. No.
Yeah.
So just some background information. This took place on May 4th, 1970. So it has, in fact, been 50 years. And then the location was, shocker, Kent State University in Kent, Ohio. So I'll start with a timeline of the events, and then we can talk about some more interesting things from the horrific event. So, just to be very... Actually, no, I'm not going to tell you an overview, because you should just live in suspense. On May 1, 1970, so President Richard M. Nixon, just to give you an idea of the time, he had announced on a television broadcast that he had authorized U.S. troops to invade Cambodia, which subsequently expanded the Vietnam War. That afternoon, about 500 Kent State University students and faculty members gathered on the University Commons and buried a copy of the U.S. Constitution. This act was meant to symbolize Nixon's murder of constitutional principles by invading Cambodia without a declaration of war or consultation by Congress. There was also a second rally that afternoon that ended peacefully. That same evening, a crowd of protesters who were drunk formed in downtown Kent and began taunting the local police, and they were doing things like breaking windows of shops downtown and other stuff like that. So, Ohio Mayor at the time, Leroy Satrum, I think that's how you pronounce it, declared a state of emergency. This led to the mobilization of the town's entire police force, thus forcing the demonstrators back on campus. And things started to quiet down around 2:30 in the morning. So now we go on to May 2nd. At this time, Mayor Satrum, we're just going to go with this pronunciation, he was very worried about more unrest, and he asked Governor James Rhodes to mobilize the Ohio National Guard. When the guardsmen arrived at Kent State, the school's ROTC building had been set on fire. They didn't know the cause. We still don't know what caused that fire. And at this time, there is already a crowd of about 1,000 people surrounding the building. Many of them are actually cheering on the fire and trying to prevent the firefighters from putting out the fire.
Yeah.
At this time, the National Guardsmen used tear gas in an effort to force the crowd to disperse, and campus was cleared again at midnight. So those were the first 2 days that led to the event.
Okay.
On Sunday, May 3rd, more than 1,000 National Guardsmen had arrived on campus. Governor Rhodes had flown to Kent in the morning, and in a press conference had called the protesters, quote, the worst type of people that we harbor in America, end quote.
Interesting.
So he supported the university's decision to cancel the protest rally that was planned for the following day. That night, there were more confrontations between protesters and guardsmen, and all these confrontations broke out on the university commons near Victory Bell. And on campus, this was the location typically used to celebrate football victories. So, I don't know, any thoughts on that stuff so far? Lots of unrest, lots of protests, not wanting to put out a fire.
I feel, okay, so they shouldn't have rioted the way they did, but, like, can you imagine their position? Because, like, back then, they were, being drafted.
Yep.
And I can't remember, I think the Vietnam War has already happened, right?
Yeah, so basically when Nixon authorized U.S. troops to invade Cambodia, he was extending the Vietnam War, and people which wanted it to end.
Yeah, and it's like, the people that were being drafted for this war, they were, like, kids their age, who were kind of like, blue collar, they still had to work, and they'd seen their friends die, their family die, and, they, like you said, they wanted it to end. And now Nixon just announced that this was going to happen.
He didn't even consult Congress.
And so they were
anything.
pissed. Yeah. So it's like, I definitely see where they're coming from, and I feel for it. And they're, the mayor of the town, what was his name?
Satrom. Satrom. Maybe you can pronounce it correctly.
A-S...
S-A-T-R-O-M.
S-A-T.
Satrom?
Yeah. Satrom. I don't know. Sounds about right. But yeah, like, this guy's a total dick. And I'm sure you're about to tell us more about how he's a total dick or why he's a total dick. Yeah, so I feel for these kids.
Same.
And it's about to get a lot worse for them.
Yeah. So let's go to the events of May 4th, 1970. So basically,
right.
Even though the university and the governor canceled the protest plan for May 4th, people were like, nope, and they started gathering in the university commons around 11 a.m. By noon, there were about 3,000 people there, including a core group of some 500 demonstrators who were around Victory Bell, and even more people just watching. The target of their protest shifts from Nixon, Cambodia and the Vietnam War, to the National Guard, and its occupation of Kent State. So basically, nobody was happy with the situation, and they wanted them to know it. The demonstrators refused to disperse, and because of this, some 100 members of the National Guard began to march across the commons. They pushed the crowd up a slope known as Blanket Hill and down the other side into the parking lot. Following the crowd into a nearby practice football field, the guardsmen found that they were blocked by a fence. They had nowhere left to go. And they started throwing tear gas canisters and pointing their guns at the demonstrators, who were yelling and throwing rocks and other stuff, anything they could, at them. After about 10 minutes of them, the guardsmen began to move back up Blanket Hill, and the crowd started cheering that they were retreating and continued to throw things at them. So, at 12:24 p.m., so this was about an hour and a half later, just after reaching the top, an hour and a half after this all started, when people started gathering. So just after reaching the top of Blanket Hill, the guardsmen turned back and fired their M1 rifles and pistols, some aiming directly into the crowd.
Jesus.
So basically, in 13 seconds of the shooting, they fired between 61 and 67 shots. 4 students, who I am going to name later, and 9 others were injured. And one of them, named Dean Collar, was shot in the back and left permanently paralyzed from the waist down. In the aftermath, after the shootings, everybody was, like, stunned, and Kent State faculty marshals basically tried to get the angry crowd to leave the commons just to avoid further confrontation with the nervous guardsmen. I had air quotes if you guys couldn't tell by now. So the administration of Kent State immediately shut down the campus, and it stayed closed for the rest of the semester. And then, meanwhile, across the country, these shootings caused a nationwide student strike that shut down hundreds of high schools, colleges, and universities. So, if that wasn't disturbing enough, let's talk about the settlement. To this day, shock, many people question whether or not the crowd actually posed a serious threat, criminal and civil trial verdicts accepted the National Guard's position. So in January 1979, 9 years later, a civil settlement was reached by which the Ohio National Guard, they basically paid the people who were injured in the shootings a total of $675,000. And as part of the settlement, 28 guardsmen signed a statement expressing regret, but not apologizing. The quote that was taken was that, or their stance on what happened was, some of the guardsmen on Blanket Hill, fearful and anxious from prior events, may have believed in their own minds that their lives were in danger. The statement reads, they're afraid for their lives, and I wasn't there. I was not emotionally invested in the situation. I wasn't even alive. I don't know. I just think that seems kind of weird that, you guys have all the firepower, but you were scared about people throwing rocks. Well, I guess that would be scary, but it's not the same thing.
Exactly, yeah. This crowd is...
Nope.
They don't have any weapons other than the rocks they're throwing. And how big of the rocks can you find on campus? Like, how big can they be?
So, exactly. Now this gets into some more research I looked at. Actually digs into whether or not this was, in fact, relevant. So one of the... Okay. I titled this section Controversies. So basically, one of them was the age of the guardsmen that did the firing. And so... with each article that kept coming out and each report, the ages of the people in the National Guard kept changing. So that's weird for...
Really?
Yep. So, within days of the shooting, Kent State Vice President Spiro Agnew tried to justify the horrific shootings by saying, or basically by using the guardsmen's youthfulness as an excuse, claiming that the guardsmen were actually just 18, 19 to 21-year-olds. Years later, former Joint Chief of Staff Chairman Thomas Moorer made them younger, claiming that both the students and the National Guardsmen were made up of 17-year-olds. So it's already shifting, right? And that both parties were made up of inexperienced, frightened teenagers. So why do you put frightened and inexperienced teenagers in the National Guard? That's one of my first questions. So, here's the real thing. In reality, the Guardsmen weren't adolescents at all, guys. No state mobilized its guard units during the 1960s, as often as Ohio. So basically, these guys knew they would be called upon a lot. So, half a dozen of the part-time guardsmen involved in the shootings were already employed in the law enforcement field. 2 of the 8 guardsmen indicted by the U.S. Justice Department were police or deputy sheriffs. So basically, and the guard captain who testified falsely of finding a gun on the body of a slain student named Jeffrey Miller worked as a police detective. So do you really think that adolescents, 17 or 21-year-olds, would be like sheriffs, deputies, or anything else in that high in ranking?
Yeah, that doesn't add up. So
here's how old they actually were, guys. Most of the enlisted men were in their mid-20s. The officers were on average a decade older, in their 30s, if you can't do numbers, which sometimes I can't, so no shame.
Like me.
Like us. So, here it is. The sergeant, who many people believe prompted the shootings, was 39 years old. So this is the guy who probably set fire and caused all of this. Their general, whose poor decisions contributed to the day's fatal outcome, was 55. If an order to fire was given to the troops, as the latest evidence shows, like I said, this officer was probably 43. This was very weird when I was researching. Like, the numbers just kept changing, and it turns out they were lying out of their balls. So.
Yeah.
Yep.
Imagine that.
So, I don't know. That's all very shady. It's kind of disgusting, honestly. And so...
Yeah, no, that's...
Go ahead.
I was just going to say that's really interesting because from what I was told from it was that the National Guard, or the Ohio National Guard, they were the same age as these students, but now they're
not at all.
10 plus years older. And you think they would be perhaps more experienced, or, you know.
Yeah, so it's like what actually happened. And so nobody knows why it happened, and based on this stuff, I don't think they're ever going to admit why they actually did it, you know?
Yeah.
So basically, let's go on. So basically, Kent State Massacre was a horrific event, and because of it, there have been a lot of, like, memorials in its honor. And so one of them that I actually researched, and I haven't watched it yet, but I want to, it's called May 4th Voices, Kent State 1970, and it's a play by David Hessler. And so basically, it's really interesting because this is actually, like, it's a collection that comprises of, like, over 110 interviews. And there are actually, like, 20 celebrities who got onto the project because of connections to the massacre. And one of them is Tina Fey. So that was interesting. Yeah.
Oh.
And then
right.
Kent State itself has, like, many memorials and historic signage. And they even created the May 4th Visitor Center, which is the only national site that interprets the anti-war movement of the long 60s, supported the successful, I still can't talk, designation by the Department of Interior of 17 acres of campus as a National Historic Landmark. So 17 acres of the campus is dedicated as a memorial to the event. Yeah, and then there's actually, like, there's probably hundreds of more, like, songs, other memorials, and movies and stuff like that dedicated to the Kent State, so I encourage you guys to research them, but I wanted to point out these two. And the last thing I want to read off are the names of the students killed, because I feel like that's never said, just in general. So, let's start. Okay, that sounded way too peppy, sorry.
Let's start.
So, this isn't actually, like, I don't know if this is the order the students were killed, but I'll just let them off by name. So first we have Jeffrey Miller, who was 20 years old, from Plainview, New York. And then we have Allison Krause, who is 19, from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. William Schroeder, also age 19, from Lorain, Ohio. And Sandra Schuer, age 20, from Youngstown, Ohio. And that is what I'll leave you guys with.
That is so awful. They were so young.
They were kids. Yeah, if you guys have, like, siblings who literally just started college, that they were the age.
Like, yeah.
So, yeah,
them.
I don't know, that was pretty depressive research time when I saw the stuff about the numbers, and I was like, what is happening?
Yeah, and I think I heard or read somewhere that it was, like, the first guy they killed, who was the one who threw the rock while they were retreating, which made him, like, turn around and start shooting. He was, like, 60 feet away from them.
Ugh.
60 feet. So it wasn't like he was, like, right up in his face and, like, throwing rocks at him.
Yeah.
They were pretty far off.
Like, man, I feel like if there was, like, security tapes from the time available, I feel like they somehow would have gotten destroyed or something. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah, most definitely. That makes me wonder if there actually was.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. It was in, what, the 50s, 60s? In the 60s,
70s?
Right? They're 70s.
Or 1970s when this happened, yeah.
Oh, okay. So wait, was it the 50-year anniversary?
So 1970, 80, 90, 2000, 2010, 2020. It's been 50 years.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
The 70s were 50 years ago?
Yeah, guys, I still think it's 30. I still think the 70s are 30 years ago, so you know how it's going.
Yeah, I think you blew my mind a little.
Oh my gosh, wait. The 90s are about to be 30.
My dad's...
The 90s are... Oh. Oh.
We're not gonna think of that. Don't mention
70s
it.
Kids. No.
I'm almost closer to 30 than I am to 20, so that's
I'm almost 25. Oh.
I'm sad. Oh, help me. Anyways. Yeah, alright, sorry.
Yeah, it's a lot to wrap your head around. Even though that we're about to be 5 years later, we'll be in our 30s? No.
I don't want to think about it. Alright, we're not going to think about it right now.
So, shall I introduce your story of the week?
Yeah, go ahead and introduce it while I look for it. My notes.
So, I had the pleasure of picking Candace's story, and I think of her as the, what's the word? I don't know if she wants to hear this. She's the paranormal queen storyteller. And Black Eyed Kids, please don't haunt her for this. But for this week, I chose the Crescent Hotel, which is, would you say famous hotel?
It's considered America's most haunted hotel.
Yeah, so I chose America's most haunted hotel, the Crescent, located in Eureka Springs, Arkansas. And that is all the introduction you need, right?
Yes. So Katie and I actually We actually went there once and kind of walked around the property. It's a beautiful building. I would like to stay there one day. Yeah, let's get started. The Crescent Hotel is technically called the 1886 Crescent Hotel and Spa. It is currently closed due to COVID-19, but will reopen on May 15th. So in about 3 more days from the time we're filming right now, or recording right now. Like we mentioned, it's located in the Ozarks of Eureka Springs, Arkansas. It is, it's placed high above the Victorian Village, so it's like almost...
It's like a castle.
Would you say it's not quite... Yeah, it does. It looks like a castle. It has like 72 rooms and 4 cottages on the property. There's about 15 acres of walking, biking, and hiking trails. And some of these trails actually intersect through the city's dog park, skate park, and a city playground. As I mentioned, it has a spa, and it also has a pizza restaurant in the building, which, by the way, Katie and I went there once to get some pizza, and we waited like 30 minutes, and no one waited on us.
I feel like if it's like longer, like nobody came. We didn't even get chips or drinks.
Or like, yeah. And like, to this day, I don't know if we were supposed to like go find someone to like a host or a hostess to like seat us.
But the thing is, there were like several waiters who were in our vicinity and walked past us so many times, and no one checked on us.
Yeah, we should have just said something. I like even made eye contact several times with the waiter who was waiting at table next to us. I don't get it. But anyways,
it was a ghost.
Yeah. But it's also known as America's Most Haunted Hotel, as I said. It's been featured on Ghost Hunters, the Travel Channel, and New Discovery. And if you go there and travel to the 4th floor of the hotel, you can find a historical archive that guests can, like, read and look at artifacts. We didn't go there. So a bit about the history. The hotel opened on May 20th, 1886. It was built by Eureka Springs Improvement Center and the Frisco Railroad for $294,000, which is the equivalent of $8,469,423.76.
Oh, pocket change.
Inflation, y'all.
Pocket change, guys.
Pocket change. And it was overseen by architect Isaac Taylor. So now, in order to build this hotel, they had to bring in special wagons. Like, they had to construct these special wagons to haul heavy magnesium limestone up the mountains from the quarry in nearby White River near Beaver, Arkansas. I've never heard of it. So, like, due to the density of the special stone, it required precise cutting and fitting, so they also brought in a special team all the way from Ireland. And just real quick, for those of you who may not know, limestone is said to attract or make paranormal activity stronger.
Okay, no wonder.
Yeah, so like the whole thing's made out of limestone.
Yeah.
But Mr. O'Shaughnessy, hope I'm pronouncing that right.
The Loch Ness Monster. Or Bella's daughter from Twilight.
Like
Sorry.
It's like literally spelled Shaughnessy.
Oh.
Shaughnessy. Anyways, was the spokesperson of the group of this special team from Ireland, and he told the local paper, throughout the many years of his stoneworking, he has never encountered a stone with such density and quality as the White River limestone. At the time, it was one of America's most luxurious resort hotels. It's famous for its huckleberry muffins. And fun fact, it was published in the Ford Motor Company's cookbook titled Ford Treasury of Favorite Recipes from Famous Eating Places, which is a title that just rolls off the tongue, doesn't it?
Wow. Sorry, I'm just thinking, man, it would have been nice to eat there. We tried.
It would have been really nice to just, like, you know, have a huckleberry muffin and some pizza. That's all we wanted. But it's okay.
Or even a glass of water.
Yeah.
I'm not bitter.
We're not picky, though. It's fine. We're not bitter. We don't hold any grudges. We did go to a pretty good Tex-Mex or Mexican restaurant. At least the margarita was good that I had. Anyways, one article I read said that the history of the Crescent Hotel is the history of Eureka Springs. So, like, the hotel is that important to the history. The reason they both exist is because of the water, so the reason that, like, the city and the hotel exist is because of these springs. Now, Eureka Springs has about 60 springs, which were believed to have healing properties in the 19th century, and it drew in thousands of tourists. Also, how many times did I say springs in that last sentence?
Well, we can make it a drinking game if we really want to.
Yeah, I'm starting to, like, see our little catchphrases that are, like, rolling in that we say in almost every episode, so there definitely could be a drinking game for this.
I was just looking for the word spring.
But of course, people in the area, businessmen, they saw an opportunity to turn the town into a tourist town, and thus the Crescent Hotel began construction in 1884, which was about 2 years before it opened. So in 1854, a doctor named Alva Jackson took his son to the springs, and he claimed that the springs healed his son's eye injury. So he then began to use the water in his practice. The word about the water's healing power traveled wide and far, and it was believed that it could heal baldness, quote, female trouble, unquote, hay fever, cancer, and more.
Wow.
Yeah.
So basically, if I don't like having a period, I just drink the water?
I don't even know what they mean by female trouble. Like, anyways, yeah, like cramps, maybe? I don't know. Or I guess, like...
Hey, I'll take it.
This was, like, in 1854. Female hysteria, probably. That's a stupid thing.
Oh, gosh. Women have feelings. Oh, no.
Just, I don't know, give her some water from that spring and shut her up.
It's just a time bomb before I become a man.
Only a matter of time. So...
Oh, God.
So, the hotel was completed May 1st, 1886. It was a bit unclear, but it sounded like in 1902, due to slow business, the hotel would shut down during the winter, and it became the Crescent College for Women. So I don't know if this college was just, like, in the winter, or if it just closed in 1902, and then it was just the Crescent College for Women until 1934. So, in 1937, a man named Norman Baker purchased the hotel, and he turned it into the Baker Cancer Clinic. Oh, also, I got most of this information on Norman Baker from, like, a Smithsonian article, and this guy seemed to, like, be really into or whoever wrote the article seemed to be really into Norman Baker. He, like, described him as classically handsome, and was just, like, commenting on his appearance, so I don't know.
Interesting.
But yes, Baker, he sent out brochures worldwide, and he claimed that the town of Eureka was like the Switzerland of the Americas. His practice for treating patients was everything that shouldn't be done to heal those with cancer.
Oh gosh,
and
what do you do?
This guy was like a huge con artist. He would only accept patients who had no immediate or close family.
That's a great sign.
Yeah.
Oh, you need treatment. So
and it's like, yeah, all right, you've got cancer. That's fine. Are you close to your mom? Oh, she died. Oh, perfect. What was that? Nothing.
I mean,
Nothing.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah. So for those who did have some family or friends to check up on, he would force his patients to sign letters saying that they were in good health and they were doing just fine.
Oh, no.
When in reality it was far from it. His cures would sometimes consist of drilling holes in a patient's skull, and then he injected a mixture of spring water, corn silk, carbolic acid, and ground up watermelon seeds that he called Formula 5, which makes me wonder what formulas 1 through 4 consisted of.
I don't think we want to know.
Yeah, I don't want to know. So he would hold surgeries in the basement. He had a wing of the building sealed off, and he named it the psychiatric ward, was basically just a front. So those he was like practicing these like terrible treatments on were kind of like hidden. And anyone that would basically, hear their screams of pain, they were just like, oh, that's just a crazy person in the psych ward. Totally typical. Especially that's how, people thought, unfortunately, during this time, during the 30s and 40s. So, allegedly, when patients would die, he would have them carted off in the dead of night through a secret tunnel, and they were taken to a nearby crematorium. However, no such tunnel has been found. Once a patient passed on, he would send letters of condolences to whatever family they had, and then he would ask money to help take care of their burial and remains. Which then, of course, he would keep the money for himself.
What a stellar dude.
Right. So eventually the word got out around town about his mistreatment of patients, and the locals reported him. Now, I only saw this in one article, so I don't know how true it is, but this resulted in a standoff with police and FBI, which lasted a couple of days. Eventually, Baker was arrested due to mail fraud on September 1st, 1939, which, fun fact, was the same day Germany invaded Poland.
Such good vibes.
So, even though Baker tortured these poor people, he didn't get much jail time for it, because he eventually died of cirrhosis and cancer in a Florida retiree home in 1958.
He died of cancer?
So, less than...
Why didn't he just take Formula 5?
Why didn't he drill a hole in his head and stuff it with Formula 5? Interesting.
Wait, tell me if you're gonna get to this, but does he remind you at all of, the doctor, quote-unquote, from American Horror Story Asylum?
I can see it, yeah. He also slightly, that, at least that practice with Formula 5 reminds me of Jeffrey Dahmer, who... would drill holes in his victims' heads and, put formaldehyde or something in their heads. Just to, turn them into zombies, basically.
Next.
Yeah. It's I don't want to know more. Either way, once Baker was arrested, Eurekans, which is what they call the citizens of Eureka Springs, were pissed, and they broke in and trashed the place. They destroyed records, and they tried to set the building on fire, so really there's no telling how many people or who passed away while it was a cancer center.
Those poor people.
So the hotel then sat abandoned until 1946, when it was bought and renovated by Herbert A. Byfield, John R. Constantine, Dwight O. Nichols, which also, fun fact, well, no, I'm not going to say that. I was just gonna say that that's a family name, actually, is Nichols, and Herbert E. Shutter. So together they restored the hotel, and they created travel packages with the Frisco Railroad, and basically there was a resurgence of guests to the hotel. In 1967, due to a wiring problem, the penthouse and 4th floor caught on fire. At the time, Nichols was the only living owner, and he decided to turn the hotel over to Resort Enterprises, Inc. It switched owners about several times since then. Some of the most notable guests include Willie Nelson, who played a sold-out crowd in the Crystal Ball, and Bill Clinton.
Oh.
In 1997, the hotel switched owners for the final time as of now, and is now owned by Marty and Elise Reinig. I might be pronouncing that wrong. When they purchased the building, the Reinigs were aware of the claims that the hotel was haunted, and they hired 2 certified mediums to do readings of the hotel and its grounds.
How do you become a certified medium?
That's what I was wondering, too. I didn't look that part up.
This is why we're friends. We're the same person.
I'm just yes, I am a certified medium. You don't need to see a certificate. But
what's your future? You have to eat food in the future. Yeah.
It's I can't read your future, but I can definitely detect there's a portal somewhere over here. I'm feeling a lot of energy. But anyways. But first, I just kind of want to talk about some of the most notable deaths that happened on the property.
There's more.
Yeah. So while the hotel was being constructed, an Irish stonemason known only as Michael fell to his death while inside the hotel. When it was a woman's-only college, a woman allegedly was jumped or pushed from a window on one of the top stories, and she fell to her death. However, no records of this exist. And also, unfortunately, the most current owner, Marty, he did pass away in 2009 in a car accident. So those are like the known deaths that happened on the property. But now to the ghosties. So the two mediums they hired, Ken Fugate, who, fun fact, he was on an episode of Ghost Hunters I watched about this episode, and they called him a historian.
Oh, I've seen that episode.
And they didn't mention anything about him being a medium. And anyways, they also, Carol Heath was the other medium. And they allegedly discovered a portal to the other side, which was located just outside the hotel's annex entrance. In room 218, where Michael fell to his death, is said to be the most haunted room. He's a bit of a poltergeist. Guests have witnessed hands coming out of the bathroom mirror, cries of a man falling, the door opening and slamming shut, and then you being unable to open the door after it slams shut. Yes. If I saw hands coming out of the bathroom mirror, I would be out of there.
Well, I know what's gonna happen to you when you stay there now. You're gonna see them. Or your annoying friend Katie will, like, go, ooh, and, like, wave my hands in front of the mirror. Wait, that'd be mean.
Oh my gosh.
We'll see.
I would probably accidentally punch you out of fear. But yes, next up is the Crystal Ballroom / dining room, which is said to be haunted by a bunch of Victorian ghosts. One holiday season, they were setting up the Christmas tree and decorations. The area was closed off to guests, and, they left it, like, nice, pristine, and clean. The next day, they discovered that the tree had been moved, and chairs were now facing and around the tree. Like, people were, like, made a circle around the tree and were looking at it. Another time, they opened the dining room, and they discovered that menus had been strewn about the room. A waitress working in there looked in a mirror, and she saw what looked like the wedding of a Victorian-era couple behind her. The groom turned and made eye contact with her before vanishing. Anyways, she quit shortly thereafter. People have encountered a man dressed in Victorian clothing. His name is Jacob, and he sits near the window. Allegedly, he fell madly in love with a woman while he was there. If you approach him, he'll tell you that he saw the most beautiful woman there the night before, and he's waiting for her to return. I know. People in Victorian clothes have been seen dancing as if there is a ball happening in the ballroom. This usually happens kind of early in the morning when the ballroom is dark and closed off. I guess people can, like, see it through the windows or something. And then in the kitchen of the Crystal Ballroom, Chef Steve Garrison had reported seeing a little boy with, quote, pop bottle glasses, dressed in an old-fashioned clothing and knickers, just kind of skipping around the kitchen. There was also one time he turned on the lights and several pots and pans flew off their hooks.
Oh, so it's Beauty and the Beast.
Yeah. Dr. Ellis, who is one of the main doctors that had a hand in constructing the hotel, so before it was like the cancer center, he's been seen coming out of the elevator and walking into what used to be his old office. There's another ghost on the property named Brecky, who is a 4-year-old boy, and he haunts pretty much the entire hotel, and he likes to photobomb guests.
Wow.
So, if you take a picture, just make sure to look out for Brecky. Ghosts of nurses, doctors, and patients have also been reported. In and around room 419 is said to be haunted by a Baker patient who also served as a hospital assistant. Now, it was a bit unclear if Theodora is this ghost or there's another ghost named Theodora, who was an 80-year-old woman who apparently is still trying to find her key to get into her hotel room, which would be me as a ghost.
Oh my gosh.
It's like, I can't find my key. If you approach her, she will tell you she is a patient of Dr. Baker's, and then will vanish after courtesies have been exchanged. So they're just like, oh, how's the weather? And she'll be like, good.
Ugh.
Poof.
So what if you just don't ask her about the weather?
Maybe she'll just stare at you until you have a small conversation with her. I don't know. People who stay here in that room have reported waking up in the morning to find their suitcase neatly packed and waiting by the door, even though they did not do that.
Actually, that's not the worst thing, right? Like, I don't want
right?
to pack.
I would be like,
yeah, I hate packing.
I'd be like definitely okay with that. Like, oh, look at this nice ghost. They packed my stuff
and then
for
there's
me.
one that says, never come back. This is mine. And you're like,
And it's like, get out of my room. So when Ghost Hunters, the show, did an investigation there, one of the co-founders, Grant, stayed in the room. He had placed his laptop bag by the TV, and one of their tech crews named Dustin, he had to go in there to set up a camera or something, and he had trouble getting into the room because the laptop bag was now propped up against the door, which was halfway across the room from the TV stand. Right? Another ghost said to haunt the place is, she's called the Girl in the Mist. You can allegedly see her around 10:30 at night. She will fling herself from one of the east side balconies into the garden below. And she's usually shrouded in mist as she falls. On the 3rd floor, early in the morning, you can hear like squeaky wheels of a gurney, as well as see a nurse pushing a corpse on said gurney. People who do like EVP recordings will hear patients answering their questions. Dr. Baker is also seen in the hotel lobby. He wears a purple shirt and white linen suit, which matches a photograph of him, actually. Other things happen, such as orbs and strange anomalies when you take a picture, especially in the morgue area. There's a cat that haunts the property named Morris. He used to live in the hotel. Room 2500 is where patients were taken when they were basically on their deathbed, and that's said to be haunted as well. So, next to the morgue is the laundry room. A maintenance man once witnessed the washers and dryers suddenly turn on at the same time. Like, by themselves. If you go there for a ghost tour, which they're currently closed, I don't know if they have any plans to reopen for the ghost tours anytime soon. But on these tours, they'll take you down to the basement where the surgeries took place. Which also the morgue is down there, and apparently the laundry room. The morgue still still has the autopsy table. People have claimed to seen children huddled under this autopsy table begging for help. In the walker is where in the walk-in freezer, is where specimens were kept. And people said they feel like a hostile entity there. While ghost hunters were there, they caught on a thermal imaging camera a man wearing what looked like a military uniform and cap. They tried to recreate it several times, but to no avail. And that's one thing I always liked about ghost hunters, is that they didn't necessarily believe in ghosts. They always tried to debunk it or come up with some kind of scientific explanation, but it was something that they couldn't recreate, and they said that they think they caught a full body apparition on camera. However, ghost hunters did conclude that the hotel was not haunted, but that it definitely had some activity there. Yes. So now back to the ghost tour. People on this tour have been known to become faint, and a few have even passed out. They first turn pale, and then they fall against the wall, and some pass out briefly before coming to. This usually happens around where the entrance to where the portal is said to be. And last but not least, last year, during an archaeological dig on the property by the Arkansas Archaeological Survey, medical specimen jars were unearthed in an area that was known as Baker's Bottle Graveyard. Some of the bottles still had fleshy remains in it, such as tumors. Yeah, and that's all I have on the Crescent Hotel.
Oh my gosh. I hope if I ever go there again, that the ghost I see is Morris, the cat.
Yeah, I hope I just see Theodora and then she packs my bags for me the next day.
Yeah.
Or was that? Yeah.
That probably won't happen, though. We'll probably get bad luck.
I would probably get the hands coming out towards me.
I probably just
but if you do... But if you do want to know more about the Crescent Hotel and the history of Eureka Springs, Arkansas, I definitely recommend checking out Lore's episode 103 called Disappointment, which he covers in great detail a little bit about the city and how it was kind of founded on fraudulent claims and con artists.
Wow.
That's really all I have on the story. Yeah,
that's our anniversary episode.
I hope you enjoyed, and I feel bad. I felt very quiet during your story of the Kent State Massacre, but I was
horrific. I don't blame you.
Yeah, that's a lot to take in. And it's especially for me, because usually things don't get to me. But I only recently heard about it this month. Which,
well, I heard about it from you on Facebook when you were like, "This is one of my favorite murders." And you were sharing an article, and I was like, "What is this?"
Yeah, I had literally just listened. Sorry, my leg fell asleep. I had just listened to the episode of My Favorite Murder where they cover it, and I was in awe. Like I said, never heard of it before. You know, it's not something they teach in the history classes I took, unfortunately.
That's messed up.
And I feel like
they should teach that.
Yeah, I just think it's funny, to quote him from "And That's Why We Drink." But yeah, I just think it's funny that, you know, they didn't teach that to us. Why didn't they teach that to us? Is it something they would rather forget, or they don't want us to recreate it?
Well, even so, either one is like, I don't know, ignorance is bliss, but like, oh.
Yeah, definitely that should never have happened. We shouldn't have gotten involved with Vietnam or Cambodia to begin with.
Yep.
So that's a bunch of BS.
Some happy stories today, huh?
Yeah, so happy. Yeah, anyways. Well, let's see,
Do you have any updates about your new podcast?
About my new contacts? Oh, podcast. I was like, I haven't gotten any new contacts. Yeah, podcast. So, as of right now, the podcast is still not out, but we did record our first episode for A Few Good Albums, so I'll keep y'all updated on that. I also got my camera in, so now I can make videos.
I want to see after the end of the episode.
I don't have it with me, but I'll send you some pictures of it later. But yeah, what about you? Got any new creative endeavors going on?
I will be uploading a new video on Saturday for my YouTube channel, Freckled to a T, T-E-A, and so be sure to check it out. You can see me be more awkward without Candace, so it's gonna be a mess.
So exciting! I'll start linking your YouTube video into your YouTube channel, into our show notes. That way people can check it out.
Cool. Yeah.
All right.
We can sponsor each other.
We can.
That'd be great. Alright, guys. Until next time, this is Katie.
And Candace. And remember, kids, don't let black-eyed kids tell you they can cure cancer by drilling a hole into your skull and filling it with Formula 5.
Don't recommend it. Alright, bye, guys.
Bye.